Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Browne and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
I'm increasingly interested in people who write, not just even do the RPG design, but people who write for RPGs. We've talked to a number of folks about it, and it's just something I find I'm more interested because they are they're writing in a gaming world, and they're writing in obviously fiction, whether it's be the adventures or the content that describes how to do the gameplay itself, even if they aren't the designer.
Fan fiction can still be literature.
Yeah. And this goes, and again, I don't want to, we're doing Captain's Log, and that's kind of what thought, we've talked to folks that have edited and written source books, core rule books, things for different games. It's an increasingly interesting area for me for creatives. And the folks that not only can do that, but can do so many other things at the same time. And I think the guest we have tonight is a phenomenal example of someone who is in many ways a Renaissance man, Renaissance person.
I think that's fair.
Just around the fact of what they do, what our guest does on a daily basis, in addition to his involvement with Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, we get to talk to so many interesting people, although as we'll hear shortly, this interview, it went in a direction that we weren't expecting, nor was he.
No.
But it's just where we went, and it makes for what I think you and I consider one of the more important discussions we've had on Dice and Mind. It's something that you and I offline have been talking about, well, literally since the very genesis of the podcast. I mean, as soon as actually even before, Brad, you and I kind of walked into interviews, right? And Dice and Mind became this interview-based format. You and I had from the start been interested in looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, at just blatantly talking about racism and other bigotries as they pertain or through the lens of RPGs and just whatever. And yes, you and I have addressed it in some episodes, but we've been talking for 2 years actually about how to bring this in a meaningful, substantive way to Dice and Mind, which was not even remotely on our minds when we began this interview. And so I don't want to say too much more, but we are really grateful to Michael Dismuke for joining us and for really just diving in. And it was such a good conversation. It not to diminish anything we've talked about with anyone else, but this one I think feels to us, could I say, like one of the more important, bigger picture conversations we've had, beyond like just fascinating, meaningful, intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an area that we've wanted to address in some form or another. We just we hadn't quite put connected all the dots to find a way to do it. So for us to fall, or to I don't want to say fall, and that's wrong terminology, for us to head in that direction in this conversation was one of those where when I think when we both got offline,
we were like, that's awesome.
That was, I mean, I have this with almost every conversation, but it's just a different level of kind of like warmth and feel like not only is it a great conversation, but it was an education for me.
Yeah. And I mean, full disclosure, when it comes to issues and problems in this country and even globally around race, gender, belief, attire, sexuality, right? When it comes to the bigotries we are all seemingly surrounded by in society. I mean, full disclosure, I regularly am talking about and teaching this stuff in my courses, right? I'm this is not new material for me, but you and I have talked about from the beginning, this is not a journalistic podcast.
No.
Very intentionally not. This is not the purpose. There are many others who do that much, much better than we would or could. It's not what got us into Dice and Mind, and it's not the purpose. And we don't think it's why people listen to us. All
Yeah.
four of you. That said, and we thank you for that. That said, once in a while, these really almost magical things happen while we're talking with intelligent, insightful, sensitive, aware people. And this is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like I'm educated in some form or another on when we have these interviews on many different topics. This one was special.
It was.
And the discussions we had even outside of it, obviously we asked Michael, I think on the episode and outside of it after we were done recording, that we really would love to have him back.
Yeah.
Not only to talk, not only to talk Trek, but to talk leadership, to talk. Mm-hmm. He has such a breadth and scope of knowledge. We couldn't even. Yeah, we couldn't even touch on everything that we wanted to.
His Silicon Valley experiences, as you'll hear, they run deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael Dismuke is a certified professional in talent development and certified leadership development and succession strategist. He is a national speaker trainer and consultant, a freelance writer for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, and a published comic creator.
Finally, it took us about 16 minutes. Yeah, I love that. Rocketeer shirt. Yeah. And it took us about 16 minutes. We should have probably hit record 15 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah, you lost totally a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. So this is going to be like a 5-minute episode. We're sorry you all missed it.
Yeah, sorry. And it won't be deleted like the one Jason did.
It will not be.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Michael, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, this is great.
My really pleasure. Appreciate it. I breaking the fourth wall. I don't know ultimately where we were able to join you and Jim on your podcast. And now you're coming and joining us. At some point, they will come out and they will all be out at the same time. We don't know when that will be.
Yeah. Really looking forward to it.
Hope so.
But there's so much we can talk about beyond just the work you do writing with Star Trek Adventures. And we do want to get there.
Oh, yeah.
I got to ask, because we were talking before about some of the stuff you've done in the past. I'm trying to not make this too much of a softball where you're like, where do I begin? How did you kind of get started in a career that drove you towards writing?
Yeah, that's really our number one question.
So how did I get started writing? I'm gonna have to say, how did I get started writing? Because most people start writing before they get a career in writing, right? Mm-hmm. So I was the biggest mistake my mom ever made, she says, is when I was 9 years old. We were in Shasta Lake, 1983, 8 years old, and we were in Shasta Lake, California on a houseboating trip, and the houseboat would pull up to this store that was in the middle of the lake, and I got out and I was just a little kid wearing some really tacky 1980s shorts, and I was there and we were buying Charleston chews and everlasting gobstoppers and all this amazing candies from the 80s, right, that made us who we are as humans. And I was in the store and I saw this little circle-y magazine racky thing, and I walked up to it and I saw these things that were comic books. And this was my first time being exposed to comic books. And my mom, nonchalantly, as she's trying to pack all the goods and ice and stuff we need for the houseboat, I went, "Mom, can I have one?" She said, "Yeah, pick one." She says that's the biggest mistake she made in her life because I grabbed, and I still remember what I grabbed. Ooh, and hold on, I'll show you what I grabbed. Give me 1 second.
Oh,
he
runs away
off,
from his background, which is the ready room.
Spoiler alert: we don't think Michael knows we're not video.
I know. Oh, you guys are podcast?
We're a podcast.
Okay, well, I'll raise it up for you guys.
I know, we want to see it. Yeah.
Not only is this what I grabbed, it's the exact issue that I grabbed that day. Okay.
Is it the exact copy of it?
The exact copy of it, still in mint condition.
Oh, Marvel Secret Wars.
Wow.
Oh.
Issue number 8, when Spider-Man first got his black costume. So this is really the introduction of Venom, right? And so that was the comic I picked. And the reason I picked it, if anyone looks at issue 8 of Secret Wars, the cover, I picked it because it had the most superheroes in it. Because while Spider-Man is in the front in the new costume, in the background, I just saw all these multicolored heroes going at it. So I picked it up. I took it on the houseboat. Again, this is the exact one. So I knew at a young age to preserve it in perfect condition.
Jeez.
And I flipped through it. I probably read it 20 times on that trip.
Yeah.
And I remember the one who stood out to me the most was not Spider-Man, was Thor. I fell in love with Thor that day. I was like, who is this guy? And Thor and Enchantress for having this little go at it in the whole series. And that changed my life that day, because I was like, what is this medium that I've just been introduced to? I went back. I remember asking, where do I buy these? And back then we had a store called Thrifties where you buy ice cream and pharmaceuticals, and they had them. But then I found out our town, Pacifica, California, actually had Coastside Comics, a comic book store. And I walked in there, and I'm telling you, that was the day I knew I needed a job, because I needed to afford to buy, as when my mom would only give me $1 a week. And that only got me back then. This was a 75-cent comic at the time, right? So that got me 1 comic a week. And I was like, this isn't enough. So I started working at age 11 to buy my own stuff. I haven't stopped working since age 11. Jeez. And it was to fuel my comic love. So writing started then. I started writing my own comics. I started making my stories. And then at age 15, my friend Roman Lopez, I still remember, and to this day, he introduced me to Champions RPG.
Okay.
And from there, Heroes Unlimited. And from there, I stumbled onto Marvel TSR. And I started this habit after I started running my own games at age 15, that I would go home and I would write them up.
Oh, cool.
So no matter what happened, I wrote them. So I actually have stories going back, I'm not going to say how old I am, 30 something years. And I can still to this day go back and see all the adventures we ever played.
Well, I will say you are as young as we are.
Yes.
And you look a lot better than we do. So good on you for making that work.
Yeah.
I'll quote the Dolly Parton thing that I mentioned earlier. It takes a lot of money to look this cheap.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's really cool though. I mean, that's just for being 9 and then 15. That's prescient. Like most kids, I mean, we were there. It was the same time of life. It was the same time of history. We were all reading these things, but most of us weren't thinking about like preserving it, telling it, saving it.
The 80s were an amazing time. And I mean, now that we're past it, you know, for those who lived through it creatively for the 20th century, the 80s was an amazing time of explosive ideas. And there was enough, similar to the internet now, media was growing in radio and TV, where we were blown away with the ideas that were coming off, whether it was GoBots or Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, My Little Ponies. My mind was exploding constantly with ideas.
And science and technology and arts and the humanities, and they were all cross-feed, right? For like the very end of like 79, 80, 81, 82, maybe into the mid to late 80s. It was just explosive.
Yeah, the syndication of amazing shows like Lost in Space, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, merging with the rebirth of Star Trek, Buck Rogers, Aaron Gray. Let's pause for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember that one.
I met her in person, too.
Oh, Aaron Gray. Oh, wow.
Come on, you'd watch Buck Rogers.
I know, so it took me a moment. I loved Buck Rogers as a kid, though. I went about 4 or 5 months ago. I went back and I watched some clips of it. Let me tell you, that plays a little rougher in 2023. Although I will never tire of the disco scenes of how period they were.
With the ropes,
with the ropes and like what are they even doing?
Me and my sister had a flexible hula hoop, and we would imitate that dance that they
That's what
do
it
in Buck
looked
Rogers.
like.
That was
Right?
so
And
cool.
I remember being
forgot
a
about
little
that.
kid like, this must be what the future looks like.
Yeah, it was so cool. Yeah, the 80s. And so from there, then I ended up working for an ad agency at age 18 because I graduated I graduated high school at age 15.
Nice.
And then I went and got graphic design courses, and I started working for an ad agency at age 18 because back then it was the .com, and they would hire anybody to do anything because you couldn't find workers. So I was blessed by that. Yeah. So at age 18, I was writing copy for radio and TV. And I was doing radio voicing, TV voicing, putting together commercials. And then at age 20, I started my own ad agency, .com. And I was writing like crazy for that. And so that kind of, that just got my chops of writing various things and learning that writing was not about writing what I want, but there's an art form and structure to writing depending on the medium that you're on. Technical writing, stuff like that. I used to do technical books for MCI. So what happened is every day I write. And so, fast forward to 2018, I started a blog with Tony Pye and Colin Wilson and Mark Meredith about Star Trek Adventures, which was just starting at the time. Right. And because we're prolific writers, every day we have stuff coming out on this blog, knowing no one's reading it. And then all of a sudden in 2020, Jim Johnson, project manager for Modifius, reaches out to me and says, "You're writing a lot of stuff. Are you interested in writing for Star Trek Adventures?"
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I totally buy that from Jim, but that is so cool.
Yeah, and then that's that story. And I had done some Kickstarters and produced my own manga and gone to Comic-Con and produced a manga comic book called Game Masters, which I have trademarked, which is really fun. But this was the one where I can't believe I'm writing for a major IP.
Right.
Star Trek. And that really set me off to where I feel I'm now. Jim argues it, but I feel like I'm at the peak of my writing career because I'm writing really what I want passionately, which is Star Trek stuff. So that's the story in a short bit.
That's so interesting.
I'm gonna just take a hard turn. When you write, just because I'm curious, because I'm not as prolific a writer, especially when it comes to fiction. What does your desk look like? Are you, because I know I watch Jason and he does a lot of outlining, and Jason's penmanship is just fantastic.
Awful.
Do you go
awful?
Oh, come on, you should see mine. But do you kick off on a computer? I know it's a kind of a goofy question.
No,
I'm just always
not
curious.
I'm
curious as to what's your
workflow.
Yeah I'll tell you how my brain works. So and it applies to everything I do. So I remember in 1998 I had a client I had taken on, and they were a real estate agency. They were a real estate agency in pardon me, in San Francisco. And I knew I wanted to do something different to get them noticed on cable television. And I couldn't figure it out all day long. I worried. And so I went to sleep. And at 2 a.m. in the morning, I woke up and I wrote out a jingle. And the next day I took it to them. And the owner was like, "This is amazing. Let me make a couple tweaks." And we put it on. Not only did it kill in the San Francisco market, we ended up expanding into the Seattle market. And I really blame it on, I slept all day long. I worried about it. I went to sleep. I woke up, and at night I do wake up and take notes. So my process is, I'm presented with whatever the problem is, whether it's science fiction story or whether marketing issue or talking points for my boss or putting together an event in my company. And I kind of mill on like, what's the goal? What do I want people to do? What's going to make me buy it? And I just mill on it. I worry about it too much. Like I really am I worry about it, but then I meditate on it. And then one day the idea comes while I'm running or while I'm at sleep. And then what I do is I outline all my points. So when I do a story, like say for instance, I'm writing a story, I write down all the scenes I want to see. I write them out of order, but I write all the great points and the grisly scenes I want to see and the poignant conflict I want to see. And then what I do, I treat it like puzzle pieces. I stack them and then I weave them together somehow.
Interesting.
So I'm a very outline oriented, very let me meditate on it. And then once I get in the zone, I just dive in and I just weave together all the puzzle pieces.
So the point in fact, you're, I mean, obviously an active and increasingly prolific writer, but you have a day job, a high level, right, executive day job. I mean, how do you balance that?
I'm blessed. I'm going to say, first of all, I'm blessed. I'm going to think my blessing starting with my parents who raised me in a very constructive way. I couldn't have done it without them. My dad is one of the most creative, happy, positive people on the planet. Cool. My mom is the Donna Reed level mother that was on TV. Awesome. That hardly exists anymore. She was a stay-at-home mom. So I'm going to have to thank them that I actually had the privilege, which a lot of people don't have, for the stability where I could actually spend my summers playing. Right. You know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I have to credit that. It's not me. It's not about me. My day job also is super creative.
Neat.
So I'm in a creative field. So I do communications and organizational development, which is all about innovation. I'm here in the Silicon Valley Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Innovation is the key. You can't do stuff like other people. So I've been blessed to be pushed and surrounded by creative people where I feel like I'm always in a writer's workshop. And I think it's that construct that has made it so that I'm kind of always on creatively. And even when I'm watching TV or watching movies, I'm actually taking notes on how they're constructing stories and what's working and what's touching me and what's not. Yeah. When I go to a work conference and that person's a dud maybe on the podium, but the next person blows it out the water, I'm trying to figure out what that formula was.
Okay. We were just talking about this today, Jason.
That's cool.
I'm formulaic. I'm very formulaic. So I give a lot of lectures. I do a lot of public speaking. I ran a 3-hour class on time management today for my company. And there's formulas to be successful, including with storytelling. All humans know how to tell stories, but very few realize there's actually a hack. There's actually a formula for storytelling.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How did you end up going into this position you are in now as your day job with communications and development? And just hearing you talk about time management, I love those type of discussions.
I mean, ignoring the fact it was a 3-hour session on time management still.
Yeah, but you know what I did half the time? Just so you know, half the time what I did is I give them time. For an hour and a half, I had them list everything they need to do at work. And then what they do is I have them calendar it. For the first half of class, they get quiet time with jazz music on to write down everything they have to do. I show them how to calendar it. And then the last hour and a half is how to manage that calendar when you have interruptions and priority mixes and stuff like that. So it's an hour and a half, but I show them the practices I do in daily life to stay organized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad, sorry, I cut you off. Finish your go.
No. That was you kind of. I was just gonna say, how did you end up in the position where you're? I think you're lucky to be able to do this type of work. You know, how did you? Because you worked in an ad agency. How is the path kind of led to where you are now?
Sure. So when the dot-coms crashed, a lot of my clients started going under.
Yeah.
Our business model in fact, what's funny, the real estate client, which was my number one client, and I had a lot of others, but they were .com, so they started going under. Yeah. But the real estate client, what they used to do back then, because in San Francisco, the vacancy rate was 0.001% during the .coms. That's how hard it was to find a place. So what happened is we used to sell listings by landlords. They would pay a subscription, $90 for 3 months, and then we'd send them listings before anybody else, so they had the best chance at getting a place. Yeah. Craig Newmark comes along. I don't know if you know him, billionaire, started Craigslist. You're probably familiar with Craigslist. Yeah. So Craig Newmark comes along and he starts posting the listings for free.
Yeah.
So I had a meeting with my clients in 2001. I sat down with Craig Newmark. We were at 9th Avenue House in San Francisco, on 9th Avenue in San Francisco, and my clients, and you're going to love this story because you guys love RPG and Star Trek. So for the first 15 minutes, I'm trying to get Craig Newmark to monetize the listing, say, hey, make it so people have to pay $10 a month. Well, we have the engine for you to do it. We blah, 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 tech, blah, blah, blah. 15 minutes, he's not convinced. Like, no, I'm not in it for that. I'm a philanthropist. I'm already a made man. I think we need community boards. I'm here to service the consumer, not the corporation. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay. So the first 15 minutes, we talked about that. The last 45 minutes, we talked about Star Trek Voyager.
Nice.
Because he was a Voyager fan.
That's
and
awesome.
So my clients were so mad at me when we walked out of the restaurant. They said, what the heck? That's nice. What the heck were you doing talking about Voyager for 45 minutes? I said, if you couldn't pick up that on 15 minutes that your business model is dead, then come on. I said, the guy is not money motivated. We're done. And I told him, close it up. So one, I love this story just because I was like, I need to get out of having my own ad agency and go into real estate, which I did. two, because Craig Newmark's a Star Trek fan. I love the guy, right? So, and a philanthropist.
That's cool.
So my point being is, what happened is, from there, I took all that ad knowledge and ended up going into real estate, because in the Bay Area, as long as you're in real estate or medicine, you have a job. So I chose real estate. And the place I was working, I was managing teams of property managers. So I was teaching them customer service and running buildings and finances. But I started touring the company with time management, customer service, and conflict resolution classes, teaching people how to work with people. And then I started doing industry-wise. So when our company got bigger and bigger, they decided they needed, as an HR function, organizational development and communication. Then I climbed up and moved over to the HR side of the company. And that's how I ended up as an executive on that.
Interesting. Okay. Fascinating.
See, that's just an awesome.
I mean, it's a very Silicon Valley story.
It is.
But that's so cool. Okay, so and this sounds like a joke, and it's not. I've never lived there. I want to.
Be aware, Jason always prefaces, and then it really does sound like a joke.
I love jokes. I'm cynical, so go for it.
It might sound like, but it's not. So I love the Bay Area, love San Francisco. I've been there over and over, recreationally and for family, and ideally both. As someone who was in real estate, what's your thought about things in the Bay Area now, given everything going on?
It's insane. It's unfair. And the reason I'm going to say that, but the problem started a long time ago. I mean, this is going to get deep. You guys ready to get deep? Because the company I work for now, I work for a nonprofit affordable housing developer.
That's what I thought. Right.
Yeah. And so let's keep in mind that the crisis we're in now is because after Jim Crow laws were abolished, and the laws about fair housing were abolished, what wasn't abolished was the ability for the government to redline. And what that means is, like my house that I live in right now, it was built in 1963. And if I look at the deed on it, it says you will only sell it to white people. And what they did, and anything before 1978, many of you are going to see on your deeds, if you're in an affluent neighborhood, that it was said you were only going to sell it to white people. So even though segregation ended, real estate law did not catch up.
St. Paul wasn't like that. Minneapolis was.
Right. And so what happened with that is all the wealth that went up with equity. I was fortunate. My dad always got us into neighborhoods that we were not supposed to be in. My mom's white. We knew how to work that. And so with that, we got the equity benefits of that. And the reason I say that is, in the Bay Area, what you're seeing is wealth was purposely designed by the highway system. And if you look at the areas that were redlined, you also see poverty and crime and lack of services in those areas too. So it's very strategic. Right?
And that's not by any means unique to the Bay, but absolutely.
Right. Yeah. But what happened, and there's a book you could read called Color of Law by Richard Rothstein that shows how that was designed by the government and approved to make sure wealth transferred to certain people. But how the Bay Area gets affected by that is that when Silicon Valley, that flipped it, because now all of a sudden you had the most profitable business with technically the lowest overhead, because it was software, it's computer based, where we became the most sought after place to live in the country.
Right.
And that inflated prices, where these companies who were making imaginary dollars, because we know what happened like in the 2001 and again in 2008 and 2009, these imaginary dollars fuel the economy. It's not realistic for the blue collar worker or average working family to keep up. Even retired people, once you get your Social Security check, you're never going to keep up with the inflationary factors of .coms. Right, in Silicon Valley. So it's a pretty wicked monster that's out here. So companies like what I work for, what we do is we use state and federal law in order to build affordable housing where the money is, not out in some next to a chemical plant or next to a railroad track, but in the middle of Palo Alto, where people who work at Starbucks or wipe the butts of Silicon Valley kids, like nannies and stuff like that, you don't have to drive 2 hours away to live. You can actually live in town. So our company is all about workforce housing and letting kids who graduate college or seniors who are retiring stay where you grew up and keeping community together. Awesome. That's what we do.
That's so cool. I mean, so like we often will talk as a family, like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to move out to California, right? We all love it and we all know it. And I'll say to our daughters, and they've heard this, they finally are getting it. They're like, well, but you would, like, people make more out there. I'm like, yes, I would make, and same with my wife, I would make twice as much as I'm making now, but it would cost at least 3 times as much
Do you
to
know
live there.
I mean, to your point, okay, first of all, a family in Silicon Valley, in the area where we build our properties, they're considered low income if they make under $114,000 a year. That's low income out here.
Right.
In addition, in order to even think of buying a house in San Francisco or Santa Clara, you have to make a minimum of $348,000 a year as a household.
I mean, think about that. I asked in the before times, so 5 years ago, we there was a family event. We were all coming together, not really close to them, but they live, where does my cousin and her husband, they live, I think in Mountain View. I think they're actually in Cupertino. They've been there for, since like, I don't know, 90s, probably 90s. Right. So so I'm sitting with my cousin's husband, lovely guy. I'm sitting with him that Sunday morning after the event, and I'm like, okay, so very serious here. If I want to move out to the Bay Area eventually, like way out, and this is what, at least 5 years ago, at least, I'm like, very truly, what do I need to do? And he said, he's like, what you do is you buy a house for $1 million, whatever you can find, wherever you can find it, and you hold it for 1 to 2 decades until you're ready to come out here, and then you sell it to try to downsize and live where you want to live. And I'm like, and you're being serious? And he's like, yeah, that's it, right? There's a reason that the census actually decreased for the first time for California.
Yeah, I mean, I know that for, like, if my dad had not bought in 1978 in a suburban town that at that time was on the lower end, because it didn't really boom up till the 80s. Remember, it was after the SNL scandals, and the 80s really is what went crazy, right? So if my dad had not bought in 78, that created a cycle, again, in a place where you can grow equity because he wasn't in a red line area.
Right.
I could not have stayed in the Bay Area because I was able to save enough money to buy my first home and then upgrade into the home now. But I'm at the point now with the inflationary factors that if I ever had to sell my home, I wouldn't want to stay in California. I'm moving to the South. I'm going to South Carolina.
Yeah. That would be a favorable financial difference.
Right. Like, because out here, I don't want to work to have a home.
Right.
I want to work to live.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, but too many people out here are working just to have a roof over their head. You know, that's the only reason they have to work. They have no choice.
But and it's important that people hear this because, you know, Jason and I are Midwest, and he and I are plugged into it, whether it's for family or business or just personal interest. I don't think people realize, you know, there's all this division and sniping back and forth regionally and all that. I don't think they realize the challenges there are living in that area.
It's not pretty.
Let alone if you're living in that area, and I hate to say it, not my color. You know.
Yeah.
Oh my. I mean.
Well, here's the weird thing, though. Again, they've changed it in the Bay Area, and this is going to happen throughout the country. People want to make it a color issue. It's no longer a color issue. It was initially when it was incepted, but what's happening now is what has happened historically through human history. Yeah. Because remember, racism didn't really start till the 1500s. Right. I can get into that. Right. Racism was a tool purposely manufactured from a certain organization with 5 papal decrees. That's a clue. Go look it up. Mm-hmm. But if you look historically, people have always been divided by economics.
Always.
And so what's happening now that any color can really make money. Mm-hmm. Now what you're seeing happen is the divisions are happening economically. Yeah. Yeah. And in the Bay Area now, it's an economic separation where people who grew up in their neighborhoods are being priced out, which breaks up communities. And I want to know all my neighbors. I know I do, because that creates safety when you know everybody. Yeah. But we're in such a transient area in the Bay Area. That's why we're seeing higher crime. People just don't care about each other because you don't know who your neighbor is. Yeah. It's dangerous. Yeah. That's why I'd rather move to a small town and know all my neighbors, because safety factor is just so nice, you know?
Yeah. But let me ask, because you bring up a great point about the stratification based off of economics versus demographics. Mm-hmm. You know, do you think if you moved wherever it would be, cross country, whatever the case is, do you feel like it would be a major cultural shift because maybe that's not as progressive? It's not as progressive an area. No, I'm asking not because I know the answer.
No, and here's the reason why. My sister lives in the South. right? And she lives in Charlotte, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly am going to give it to people. I think most people are decent, loving, kind people. I think people get mean when you threaten them with fear or finance, and that fear can come through propaganda and stuff like that. Right. And so I believe that people react a certain way, whether you want to call it bigotry, racism, anti-diversity, because they're being forced, something's being forced on them to change. Right. But honestly, like my dad, think about it. He lived in the South during segregation.
Yeah.
We moved to a town that was predominantly white people. We had only 5 Black families in the thing. He says to me, sometimes people aren't just racist. He used to say to me, he says, people don't assume people are racist. Sometimes people are just jackasses. And what that meant was a jackass is going to be a jackass for whatever reason they want to be a jackass. They don't need a reason, right? And I remember him telling me that because it's equally racist to assume that because someone is white, I'm just saying my example, that they're going to lean toward racism. That's equal racism, in my opinion. We have to really talk to the people and get to know them and meet people on a personal level, because I do believe that people are victimized purposely in the same way in this governmental system, no matter what color of skin. Some are purposeful victims. Like, imagine if you can, like, think about, boy, you're really getting deep here. Suppose you go back to Germany in 1933 and 1936 and 1939, and you have an entire government only giving you money and wealth if you act racist. Imagine that. Do you realize the kind of character people have to be to fight against that when they're the beneficiaries of the racism? So we have to understand that there are bigger minds out there who constructed a country to benefit you if you're racist. Who do you blame for that? Right. And so, but if you treat each person, I believe if you give people true equality and put people on the equal level playing field, that men, women, children are going to be nice. I just think that the constructs that we live in, religious, business, and political, are built to create divisiveness, to make that 1% who are manipulating it richer. But us stuck in the middle are the victims.
Well, and you have this is such a fascinating discussion. I want to turn it for just a second. How do you feel like Jason and I have found in the gaming community, the tabletop community and all that, it's one of the most inclusive, open groups that we've
surprisingly so,
or been a part of. What's been your experience? Because you've worked, just based off of this discussion, you've been in these different environments, and so you have a perspective that honestly I don't have.
Well, and with the website, you're interacting with so many people so much.
Again, think about it. You're coming into a gaming space. This is what I like about RPGs. Once you buy the book, you have games for life. You don't need to spend another dollar if you don't want to. You can buy the core rule book, and if you have a creative set of people, you don't have to ever spend another dollar. So you've
don't ever tell my wife that.
Right.
Ever.
It's okay. She doesn't listen.
Right.
Ever. Yeah.
My point is this: when all of a sudden finance is out of the way,
right?
And again, fear, because everyone's just coming to have a good time and play. You can invite anyone to the table.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes games, because children, think about it. You take a bunch of 5-year-olds, one from every country on the planet, and give them a soccer ball, racism doesn't come up. In fact, even if they don't speak the same language, it's been proven that if you put them together for a year, they'll start adapting a language to communicate. So racism is not natural. It's a tool used for certain purposes to divide. So in the gaming community, I remember I had a conversation recently where people are like, well, gaming is so predominantly white guy. It's like, yeah, but remember, they're all in the same neighborhood in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Our neighborhoods were purposely segregated so that we can't interact with other people. So now you have white people, but then again, a gaming store is considered extra money you have to spend. That's what poor, disenfranchised families, lower income, they don't have money for comic books. I grew up in a white neighborhood. I could spend $5 a week on comic books. You don't have that in the inner city. So you have white people who've been penned together purposely by the government, and then they have the money for extra income for gaming stores. So of course they're all going to be white sitting around the table. see above what's happening and see the constructs that we live in, right?
Yeah.
So gaming to me now with the internet, you have more inclusivity where people don't have to live in the neighborhood to play together.
Yeah.
That changes the game, and that
It really
breaks
does.
down color lines. It breaks down color lines. That's the time we're living in now, which I'm so excited about.
That is cool. Okay, so maybe this is pivoting a little too much, but kind of along the same lines. Obviously, without giving anything away, because like you told us off here, I mean, we know you're working on a bunch of stuff, but like looking out in the future, is there any, and maybe it doesn't even have to be game related, Michael, are there things, whether they're IPs or types of projects or whatever, are there things you would love to someday be able to write? Things you haven't had an opportunity to do that are different?
I do keep myself along one guideline of what I'm willing to write for, and I have to write for a positive ending. There's enough darkness, shoot 'em, even like what goes on in America with the shooting and the violence. Do I ever want to say that my game contributed to that person thinking that violence was the best solution?
Yeah.
I think deeply about things like that. Do I ever want to have a game that encourages darkness? I just don't. That's not my personality. I have no interest in that whatsoever. So as long as I can write for something that people walk away and they feel good, refreshed, positive, and maybe it has some application in real life to them, then that's okay. But there would be stuff definitely I say no to, because I don't think there's enough of that. I don't need to be there. There's enough of that. And I understand what I want to write is not popular. That shows a lot about the state of the planet, in my opinion. But I just want to make sure that my nieces and nephews, when they pick it up, that they, after reading it, they feel good and it's wholesome. And that may be corny nowadays to some people, but you know what? There's 99% of not wholesome. Let me be the 1%.
Seriously.
I think I may have mentioned this when we talked on your show, or maybe I didn't. What we're doing now, I always tell Jason, once we're long gone, our kids are going to be able to hear us talking about these topics. And hopefully in some form or another, if they haven't already been spurred towards doing right and doing good and doing toward the light, that it helps. I want to believe that, I think there's a lot of darkness out there. Let's be honest. It's very hard to even turn on the news. Other than you need to keep informed, you can't ignore it. Do you see any sort of, I would almost argue, sorry, I'm rambling. I would almost argue that there's more and more need and more interest in reading that positivity. I think people are getting sick and tired of it. I think that's why, Trek,
Solar Punk, all of this stuff coming out.
Yeah. I mean, even the popularity,
even positive superhero films, ones that are good, and the heroes win at the end without having to kill everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember coming out after Infinity War and just being bummed, but coming out after Endgame, and I tell my son and I went and saw a midnight showing of Endgame. I had to get on a plane the next day to go down to Orange County, but I went and saw from midnight to 4 a.m. Endgame, and I came out feeling empowered, and positive and hopeful.
Oh, I get to tell my story then.
Okay.
So I took my dad with me, because my dad was big into comic books growing up too, right? And I can't believe, as a grown man, I still remember this scene when Captain America grabbed the hammer, when he pulled the hammer.
Yeah.
And I actually was holding my father's hand. My man, at that time, he was 73 years old, I think, right? And we were both crying, happy. And that whole scene from there all the way to your left, we lost it. When it said to your left,
when Sam did that,
really lost it. At the theater in San Francisco, sometimes you get these theaters. We were in San Jose, but the theater was roaring and cheering. Yeah. And that kind of feeling, like me and my dad crying each other, excited. I'm like, that's what I want to write. That's what I want every single time. And you knew who the heroes were at the end. There was no question who the heroes were. That was brilliant. Brilliant writing.
I still think, as much as, we could discuss Trek movies, I think that group of movies, culminating with Infinity War and Endgame, some of my favorite films, period.
Yeah, last greatest movie of all time. Until someone dares to try to replace it in game, last greatest movie of all time until I see someone replace it.
I took pictures of in the theater because here in Milwaukee we have this theater group that makes these theaters with all luxury seating and everything.
Yeah.
And they have the digital screens up there with the movie names, and it was 15 Endgames, and 1 Captain Marvel. And
nice.
And I thought to myself, okay,
I think you sent us a picture of that.
I did.
Yeah.
because I looked at that and I'm like, you know what? Okay, if people weren't just grasping by their fingernails for positive, it just, I don't think it would have had that, even though it was phenomenal acting and great plot and a great story culminating 21 movies all into this one thing.
Right.
I don't know if we would have seen that positivity. So for whatever it's worth.
Do you know how much brain work that takes? Again, I want to give a lot of kudos and praise to the writing group there. And this is why. Most writers, I'm going to say most writers without any equivocation, most writers will fall back on violence, vulgarity, or gratuitous sex in order to get attention and that dopamine pop. And there are a minority of writers who can say, you know what, I'm not going to use any of that and still captivate people.
Yeah.
That is a rare skill right there. Yeah. And that's the kind of person I want to be. And I strive to be, is like, can I do that in everything that I do and still give people that endorphin rush? That to me is victory, because it's too easy to fall back on the other tropes. Drop a F-bomb here, and it's just like, okay, but can you communicate viscerally without doing that?
Yeah.
That's a skill. Because believe me, my wife will say it to anyone. I can insult someone without ever saying a swear word.
Jason, you can do that.
Very well, thank you.
You could do that with just Jason could do that with just a look with his eyes.
I use it. She says you use a creative combination of words that people are like, great, and they walk away, and about 3 minutes later, it hits them in the back of the head, and they turn around.
Like, oh, he just called me an a-hole.
In fact, I had a friend once. I remember he was being a complete dork, and I said, "Okay, Osweepe." He called me back the next day. Can you figure it out what I called him?
Yeah, ass wipe. We're putting an expletive on this one, Jay. Sorry, that's
no. I already had it tagged. We're good.
Okay, good. Yeah,
and I called him Osweepe, and a day later he says, "You." I'm like, let's get creative with this. If you're going to really insult someone.
See, we've never used that, Jace. I'm surprised.
Osweepe is a good one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to remember that. Although,
and he speaks Spanish, which made it better because I knew he spoke Spanish. Yeah.
Oh, that's
we've fallen back on the old Sphincter says what, but we haven't gone down the.
That's a good
exactly.
You can use Osweepe. Osweepe use that.
That's a good one. So, yeah, I just having these type of conversations too. It just, I think that's going back to why you write and why you do what you do, and probably, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming that's probably why it would attracted you to Trek. It's what attracted Jason and I to Trek. The positivity, and let's be honest, it's not easy. It's not easy to get an endorphin rush. If you want to do it physically, you got to exert yourself. If you want to do it, turn on TV. It's not easy to find stuff that will give you an endorphin rush. I got an endorphin rush when the Enterprise D came out of the Star.
That was just a text storm. Oh my god.
Oh god, yeah, I cried like a baby.
I still get teary when I see that.
Yeah.
But it sounds. I think from what I know of both of you, you're both in long-term relationships, and I think the younger generation is going to have a harder time understanding this. Is we know we live in a society of instant gratification, swipe left, swipe right.
Yeah.
Instant gratification, literally. But when I look at my parents who've been married now 54 years,
nice.
That's a kind of love and endorphin. A lot of these people will never know.
They'll never know.
And a story is the same way. These people want to rush through these quick stories with action like Transformer movies. Sorry, I hate them. Fast and the Furious. Sorry, I do not like them.
I've never seen any of them.
Okay, so I walk out every time. I can't take it. But when you get a slow grind storytelling, and you get to the ending, and you really put your phone away for 2 hours, there's an endorphin rush that you'll never want to go back to the
two words. One of my absolute favorites, Apollo 13.
Yeah. Oh, I can do so many. Amadeus. I sit my friends through, or even The Longest Day. Great war movie from this generation doesn't know how to slow down. Let the story bake. Ride it all the way through the end. How do you feel about that? There's stuff to talk about.
Right.
And I think that's what's happening with this generation. They're going for this, TikTok level, entertainment, and they forgot how to meditate on a good story.
Kind of riffing on that again, is maybe as we start to head toward the end, which of what will hopefully only be the first of many times you join us, fingers crossed. I want to come back to where we started briefly. You were the lead writer, right, on Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log. Mm-hmm. Huge undertaking. I mean, you already know what we think of that book, but we'll say it again. It is just a work of art. It is just a glorious, glorious thing. But we've also been in another context, one or two with you, where you've said it was also a hell of a lot of work. Especially given that you appear to have a life beyond this, professional.
And you don't look beat up and worn out like we do.
Yeah, mostly Brad. So what, like, would you take on something like that again or soon? I mean, like what? Let me do it this way so that you don't have to, because we're not asking specifics. I'm curious, like, when you look over the next 5 to 10 years of writing and project work in this venue with RPGs, is that something you could see fit, or is it just so much?
Well, here's what was hard about it. I'm a less cooks in the kitchen kind of person.
Right. Yep.
Opposite, but wonderful. Jim Johnson is let's get as many people through the door to write as possible.
Yep.
So he was busy with 3 projects at the time, and he asked me if I'd be willing to lead write on Captain's Log, and he had already picked kind of who he wanted to participate. Mm-hmm. So it was a wonderful thing. I didn't work alone. Again, there were literally like 10 other people who did some sort of contribution to it. It was just wrangling that many cats was hard for me, because I'm always at work when I'm working on projects. I'm like, do you have to be in this meeting? Is there something else you could be doing? I'm just like that. So would I like to do, it's going to sound weird, would I like to do a project as big again? Yes. Okay. I would make it easier on myself by having less cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's hard because Jim Johnson is such a big heart about giving people their first chances. I want to emulate that. So that would be the balancing act.
So you're saying you'd be okay running an entire series of these where you could just oversee it. Mwahaha.
Nice try.
Nice try. Just kidding.
Nice try.
2 minutes after
there's
this
not
drops,
a spoiler there. That was
I was like 2 minutes after this, Jim, he gets an email from Jim of, so I hear you're ready to do more.
So here's what's special about Jim. I don't know how Jim does it, honestly. The amount of material he project manages. He's a project management superhero. I'm not even. I do project management, not even at his level. So this guy is a genius for that.
We've had pretty deep conversations, especially you, Brad, with Jim about project management. I just don't. I mean, I consider myself a reasonably intelligent guy. I can track, but I don't know how he can run so much that's so divergent, right, and be fully immersed moment to moment in each of those projects.
Yeah, like I need my 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, like exactly.
I need my 8 hours of sleep every night. Like if I don't get my 8 hours, I'm a wreck.
He doesn't sleep. I don't think
he does.
I don't get it.
And I mean, I think he's probably in close proximity to our age. So we know that. None of us can do the, I'm 20 years old, I'm going to drink 4 Red Bulls.
Exactly.
And power through a 36-hour session.
But if you think about it, he looks kind of denobulant. So I think he might be denobulant. And I don't think they sleep.
Not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Every 8 weeks he sleeps.
Oh my God. I mean, clever. He does have a fairly wide grin. Man.
I've seen him go. For those who didn't see, I just did the
John Billingsley with the big smile. I love that.
Right.
Okay, I want to wrap up, but you asked this question when we were on your show, and even though we're going to have overlap, if you can only pick one favorite Star Trek character.
Oh, 7 of 9, no doubt.
Okay.
Oh, why?
And okay. I've written a dissertation about it. It's on my blog on Continuing Missions. You could type in Michael 7 of 9. She, I believe, is an equal character to Spock. I think, in 55 years, when people are looking back, 7 is the Spock of our generation. she, because of TV show limitations and because of what I think was sexism back then when people were writing shows, she was totally underutilized. And I'm just going to give you one example that sells it.
Yeah.
This woman has in her brain the collective memory of thousands of species.
Yeah.
You could do a show by herself, MacGyver level, where every episode she clicks into one or two of those species to solve the problem. So maybe it's a new science way or fighting style or knowledge that they had. So we didn't even get to delve into what is in this woman's head.
Yeah.
She is a fascinating conundrum of a being. But more so than that, I think she would view, and I wrote this in Utopia Planitia. I wrote it in a side box if anyone noticed it, the Utopia Planitia campaign guide. She, I think, would view Starfleet as another type of collective, because if you don't agree with them, you get blackballed. I think she's the ultimate modern social rebel. And what they did with her in Picard, I was cheering in season 1 when she was a Fenris Ranger. Right. Basically, she took everything she knew from Starfleet, but she also took the time she spent with the Maquis over 4 years listening to their plights, B'Elanna Torres, Chakotay, the others. And she was like, okay, so Starfleet isn't always just. And she said, I'm going to take this wealth of knowledge I have, I'm going to rock this universe. I'm going to be so individualistic, it's going to shake up these organizations. She is the ultimate character. And I'm telling you right now, David Mack is about to do a book on her. I can't wait to read it because I talked to David Mack. He's an author for Star Trek books.
Absolutely.
And he knows I'm a big Seven fan. And I think he's about to rock the world with 7 of 9, how he portrays her in this upcoming novel. So awesome. She to me is the spot. She's everything I want to see in a character.
Have you ever had a chance to meet Jerry Ryan or anything? I mean, I have never met.
I wish. No. Yeah. And the thing is too, I already know how I would dignify her is that I would be like, I would tell her, I wish you had a chance to write the character while you were playing it.
Yeah, nice.
Because the direction she's taking it already is so correct that if we let Jerry Ryan, who's so intelligent and so creative as an actor, write that character, we'd be blown away. Just like Leonard Nimoy got to write Spock. They need to give her the same rights.
Just this last 5 minutes right here, Michael, this is why we and so many people love reading your work. The creativity. I mean, just hats off.
Well said.
My God. Yeah. So creative. I read your stuff and now I know where it's coming from in some of these books of like I've said to Brad, how do they go there? How do they get there? I don't know how you do it, but I'm going to keep reading it.
Oh, you're so nice. And I'm reading your book too. I'm waiting for the EPUB. You're supposed to tell me when it's electronic so I can read it on my Kindle.
We'll let you know. It's any week now. Well, by the time this drops, hopefully it will have been long out, but we were told 2 or 3 after publication. So we'll see. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And your next one's in the works too.
Next one's well in the works. Yeah.
Nice. Do you know when it's going to be out?
Well, we still have to get a contract. We have a soft yes. We have a soft yes, but I haven't even guesstimated. If it goes the same as the first one did, because again we put a lot of work into it. We submitted things when they were ready, so we didn't get a lot of editing back, right? Good. And we were always ahead of deadline, right? And if you love something, you're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
But I'll bet you we're we would have to be at least 2 years away, maybe closer to 3, right? Because of the cycle, especially for an academic publisher. It's not like they're rushing to do it. They take their time and they do it all.
That's normal. I mean, I know like our books, the big ones, take about minimum a year, if not 2 years, depending on distribution issues. So we're sitting on this stuff and I'm sitting here biting my tongue and bleeding. Yeah. But it's just part of the thing, hopefully you just have enough work that you're always writing something.
That's awesome.
I'll divert because otherwise I'll start spoiling stuff, but as we wrap up here, one, we have to have you back because there's so many topics
my God,
we haven't.
You guys are awesome.
Right. Back at you.
We didn't get even a chance to talk about Dune, and we'll have to do that next time because you have the ultimate version of the Dune RPG core book, which is awesome.
Yeah, you guys, you can't see Michael right now, but he looks so happy.
Yeah.
It's a nice book. You know, a well crafted designed book makes you want to flip through it. I literally sit on my couch sometimes watching TV. I have the books in my lap and I just flip through looking at the design alone.
Guilty.
I love books like that.
Guilty.
I do that. I still do that with Utopia Planitia as an example because I love the starships.
Oh my God.
You know, and I actually, even though with Captain's Log you can use any material.
Mm-hmm.
I keep Utopia Planitia upstairs with my Captain's Log just because I want to find a way to incorporate different ships. It's just
you can, so
you know,
easily.
It's so good. And I'm a Star Trek Online person, so seeing ships from STO in there.
Well, even with Captain's Log, you know, we couldn't get all the tables in there that we wanted, the random tables. Yeah. So I have my 5 parsecs with my 5 parsecs from home tables, along with my Starforge tables, along with some tables I've created. So I think, again, the place we're at with RPG right now and solo RPG is an amazing time. I can't wait to see what comes of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Brad.
You know, again, thank you to Michael for joining us for this discussion. We've actually recorded, to break the fourth wall as I normally do. We've recorded our intro and outro for this very soon after we did the interview, just because
and out of sequence essentially with some other episodes.
Yeah, and we wanted to do these pieces because the conversation was still fresh in our mind, and it was one that we went in directions we didn't expect. And I mean, you know, I'm not only fascinated by the work he's done with, and you know, his connection with Jim Johnson and his work that he's done in the Star Trek Adventures world. His professional career.
Oh man.
As you know, someone who grew up in the Bay Area and got involved in and was running in effect a marketing agency at 19 or 20, you know.
Well, how old was he when he started college, right? He dropped that. And
16.
And I kind of, it's like, we're just going to keep going. We could stop him right there. We're just going to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, we were, truly a Renaissance person, and we had the opportunity to speak to really a brilliant mind.
Just so facile and also rather humble and just a real delight to chat with. I mean, it just, there are few people who just kind of bring that joy, not to be kitschy, but bring that joy into a room like he does.
And I would say, you know, even if I'm finding increased interest. I'm out on Reddit a lot and follow the solo role-playing subreddit. And I'm seeing a lot of increased interest in Captain's Log. And I bring that up because you see, like Michael says in the episode, you know, he worked with 10 plus writers on this. But if you want to see a very polished piece of RPG as lit, or lit in an RPG world, pick up the book. And I'm not trying to shill it or sell it. It's just, it's a really well done. If you're a solo RPGer and you haven't watched Trek yet, that's fine. You don't have to. You know, think about it. You can work in a solo RPG world where you're in space, where you're on a planet, whatever the case is. But the material itself is interesting and a good read if you're interested in solo role playing and how they implemented it and how they wrote it. And I bring that up just because of the work that Michael has done on it. That's just one piece of who he is and what you can see, the type of work he does. And he says it. I think, you know, he gets involved with Jim because he doesn't need a ton of editing. I wish I were the type of person that could write like that and not be edited.
Nope.
I haven't, nor will I ever be. But what a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah. So, Michael, thank you so much.
I'll let you start. So what is on your desk? What is on your laptop? What are you working on these days? Whether it's RPG or RPG adjacent or whatever the case is.
What am I working on? Maybe on my iPod phone. Actually, something you said in our analysis of our interview with Michael, made me realize how relevant this is. So as we're recording, I am leaving in a couple days for a work trip. I'm you know this already. I'm going to Phoenix. It's just for an overnight. It's to meet with my friend and colleague Andy, to finish prepping for a field study we're running later. And I'm going to be away for an evening. I've got a hotel room. I'm going to be on a plane, right? A few hours each way. So what am I going to read? And I'm reading something right now. It's okay. It's not great. It's okay. I'm not going to say more. So I'm wondering, what am I going to bring? And what popped into my mind early in the day today was, maybe I'll bring Captain's Log. I'm not kidding. Maybe I'll bring Captain's Log with me as my reading material, and read it on the plane and or read it at the hotel, just to get some ideas, right? Just to have some fun. And so that's what's on my desk, or maybe in my bag, as it were, in the coming days. I'm thinking I haven't spent a lot of time with it in the past week or two, just because there have been other things. I'd like just work at home. I've just been busy with other things. But I'm wondering, maybe I'll bring that with me for my little work trip, because it would be that dedicated, uninterrupted time to just go through it, maybe get some more ideas for future Trek talks for our Star Trek New Voyages and whatever. What's on your desk right now?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I don't think I've talked to you about this yet, so I'm going to go off in a different direction. So Chaosium has stepped up its publishing schedule for a number of products, and some of them are related to RuneQuest. And I'm going to in effect mutilate the terminology, but they're in this mode now where they are publishing about the different cults. For those of us outside of RuneQuest, think of it as religions, deities, things like that. They came out with the first book. It's the Prosopedia.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I just got, because I had pre-ordered them a while back, the Earth Goddesses and the Lightbringers. And the idea of like cults and religions and things like that, we've always been interested and talked about that stuff in some form or another. But even though we're not playing RuneQuest, and it wouldn't come up, it isn't going to be on our radar at all until mid 2024 later. Just because
no offense to anyone.
Yeah, no offense. I mean, we've got Traveler next, and we're not going to hit that till next year. This idea of what they've written and what they've put together, and I'll be honest with you, I love the Wizard stuff, but the RuneQuest stuff, the way they're publishing it, for me, it scratches an itch in terms of how they're organizing things.
What do you mean?
I like the fact that titles are straightforward. I know what I'm getting in the book. They are actually interesting reads, because you're in effect reading about the history of the RuneQuest words, Glorantha, or whether you're playing somewhere else. But I remember years back you took the actual class. I had the book on comparative religions. This was eons ago.
Yep.
These books remind me of an RPG version of that, where I can go in and see and look and read about these different types of worshiping of higher beings, cults, or whatever the case is within that world. And even if we don't necessarily play it right away, I could see how the way it's organized and the way it's written is interesting. And you could apply that into even Trek, Star Wars, whatever the case is.
We've got a Trek. I texted you about this earlier today. I have thoughts about our next Trek talk.
Yes.
And that, now, we still need to roll in Captain's Log, but that could be interesting to help inform us.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many other things on my desk. I've actually, other than a couple things that I have on pre-order from Mongoose, for Traveler, and a couple things for Chaosium, and then in prep for what inevitably will be coming from Modiphius for Star Trek.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
checkbook open.
Yeah, we have no inside knowledge. We just know that because Jim has actually said on the show there are more coming.
We know there's a lot coming. We don't know what's coming.
And we don't know when.
We have internal like wager type thoughts. We haven't put money on it. You and I have been going back and forth like trying to predict what's coming. We'll see.
Yeah. And I will have to make a very solid case at home if I have to order anything recent, but I think I get a pass I will get a pass with Modiphius stuff because she knows that's important.
It's a work expense. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, granted, we don't generate any revenue on this show,
none whatsoever. Right.
It's actually a money suck in some form or another.
It does cost a little bit of money. Yep.
Yeah, but you figure, what is it? I don't think I could
make money.
Yep, exactly. So maybe someday we'll make money. I don't think people would be interested in listening to a unedited, unfettered, profanity-laced version of Dice and Mind.
Well, that would be, though it would be funny because some time back, I don't remember if you said this on air or if we were just joking about it, but you had this notion some time ago of what if on Patreon for subscribers, we would just record our banter before we clicked record for an episode.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine anyone wanting to do that to themselves.
Well, I can't imagine anyone ever wanting to pay to hear that.
No.
If nobody wants to pay to listen to what we're doing right now while we're recording,
that's right.
Nobody's going to want to listen to us.
Nothing says interesting like a brief, fast-paced discussion based on 30 years of friendship and context without explanation.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Two middle-aged guys prepping to do a podcast where you inevitably are talking about kids' college colonoscopies and what was for dinner the other night.
Yep. And those are the exciting discussions.
Oh yeah, those are the top. What I was actually talking about, though, as we wrap up, is having a. I think we should do a unfettered episode, fully explicit. The only problem is that you don't swear.
Not often.
You really don't swear. You have a very, and I say this serious, you have a very refined vocabulary and vernacular.
I can talk good.
I have much more of a sailor streak in me. And I'm a little more willing to bend the rules, although I think I'm pretty good on the podcast.
Oh, you're great.
So
yeah. Well, with that, we'll just leave you all to ponder.
What we'll do is instead of the actual profanity, we'll just use hand signals. So you.
Yeah. Since this is an audio podcast, I want you to know that Brad just gave me a big heart symbol. Yes.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly. You are number one, Brad. Right. All right, everybody. You know the deal. Be well, stay well. We will see you in a couple of weeks.